Olá, boa tarde e bem-vindos a mais uma série de webinars que temos estado a fazer relativamente às tendências de 2024 para marketing e relações públicas. Hoje vamos falar de um tema que por si já é algo que é falado há muitos anos, que é o glocal. O que é isto do Think and Act Global? É pensarmos global e agirmos localmente. E isto já é uma tendência que vem vindo a ser trabalhada desde os anos 80 do século passado. Porém, com o abrir do digital e com o reforço da democratização do digital, isto tornou-se algo ainda mais importante. Para falar sobre este tema, hoje trouxemos uma convidada internacional. Convidamos a Desiree Ibarra, que é uma business developer da 3AW, uma rede internacional de agências de comunicação, da qual nós fazemos parte do ITON, e que gostaríamos de trazer para que ela, em conjunto connosco, pudesse falar sobre este tema e pudéssemos então perceber o que é que isto tem de novo, como é que isto é importante para as marcas e como é que as marcas podem utilizar o digital com apoio local para conseguir chegar mais próximo e de forma mais correta junto dos seus públicos. E por isso, vamos convidar agora a Desiree para entrar e estar aqui connosco. Olá, Desiree, como estás?
Hola, ¿cómo están todos? Muchísimas gracias.
Nosotros estamos empezando en castellano, pero vamos ya a cambiar para inglés, ¿verdad?
Exactly.
Desiree, thank you for being here and thank you for being available to speak about Think and Act Local. And do you want to explain a little bit better what is Think and Act Local?
Yeah, perfect. First of all, thank you so much for the invitation. Couldn't be happier to join and talk a bit more about what we do daily, basically here in the 3W network. To start about Glocal, I think it's really important to highlight the evolution of this ever-evolving terrain with brands and how we're now constantly changing and looking for new trends, for reaching the customer and attracting the right target, but then also keeping it that way in a local perspective, which means we want to show our essence everywhere in the world, but we also want to feel connected to each city or to each country in their own way. So we translate all of these campaigns and all of these strategies in the most local way once we start talking, like, for example, I don't know, Portugal compared to Spain. Even though we are Iberia, we know we need to speak differently to our target and to all of our people. So we speak the same but different.
That is true. And when you say speak the same, it's not the same idiom, it's not the same language, but it's the same culture,
Exactly.
and that is in our veins. But it's completely different to the way of approaching the media in Portugal from approaching in Spain, or even influencers. When we are talking about influencers in Portugal, their way of being approached is completely different from Spain, and we already had that experience in several prospects and clients that
Occasions.
we've
Yeah,
been
that's
work
true. Especially with
and
PR. I think
yep.
nowadays the media, like even though you work the strategy, you need to land it so much when it comes to each country because each target seems from a different perspective, or you need to sell it like from a different angle to actually get people engaged with it. Same with influencers.
Mhm. And it's interesting to see that even with these differences, in the end, what it counts is the brand and the message that we want to spread, even if if it needs another or a different approach. Tell me, and let's go to hard questions from the beginning because it's always
Go
good to
for it.
start in strong. How do you feel as a 3AW team member that the global trends that we are seeing, and you had the chance to read our ebook,
Yes.
are impacting the global brands globally?
I think, like, first of all, after reading the ebook, I feel like it's so true about how changes are going so fast, how the trends, even though work globally. Like for example, the micro influencers that you mentioned, it's super different. Even if we work here in India, for example, right now,
Mhm.
you can rely that nowadays people need more of micro influencers. That back in the day, everyone wanted big influencers, but people now want to be to have someone that you can rely on, that you can believe on. So we believe in micro influencers. We trust in their community, and we want to see something that we actually can rely on. So, for
Mhm.
example, that's I think that's great, especially for the brands here in Europe. We've seen it in Latin America as well. Like people, it's so reliable on their community. They not only trust on the influencer, but also in the people texting and circling the information or sending reviews. So it's really like highlighting how now people search for transparency. And I feel like the brands are getting more and more closer to reach that nowadays.
It's interesting to see this, and it was good that you spoke about micro influencers because it's influencing marketing is something that we see that has a lot of debate around these days, where we have people that are saying influencer marketing is dying. Then we have others that say no, be careful, we are
Growing, yeah.
just changing the rhythm of and the strategies that are being used. And then there are others that are coming with data, and data is important. In
It's super
data
important.
is when we are talking about thinking and acting locally, because you need to have the global data but also the specific data from each market to see if we are being
Yeah,
effective
to
or not.
compare. And also not only
Yeah,
to compare, but I think like it's also important to adapt. When you talked
yeah,
about local, I think that the main key is for the brand to adapt your essence to the local like communication as much personalized as it can be. Because nowadays the customer doesn't want to feel one extra person in the room. They want to be
mm,
the main center of attention. So I think
mhm,
like it's really important for us like to highlight, to emphasize, and to be more and more focused on that. And that's what
yeah,
brands keep doing. And that's what data is so important nowadays. So we can contrast and implement fast every
mhm,
day, like changing or maybe our communication supported on AI. I think that's really a key strategy for everyone.
yeah. And when we're talking about data also, it's a key issue to do the metrics, to support the metrics that we need to have it, because for a long time in PR, and let's change it a little bit from the digital marketing and digital influencing to the basics, or the base, that is the public relations. One of the things that everyone was saying for a long time was it's almost impossible to have good metrics from PR, because PR it's impossible to measure. And what we see and what we are finding in terms of digital, and not only in digital but with the development of PR, is we can measure and we can align with the business and the marketing goals and objectives that the brand can have or has it. So it's really important to have this data that is global. We can evaluate it with the local data and try to start to create patterns and develop lines of development that will support and help us out on evaluating if our campaigns are being successful or not. For example, and I know that you have also this data as well, is we know the difference between the Portuguese and the Spanish market. If we
Yeah.
are talking about number of population, we are talking about uh, uh, a change or a difference of 5 times more in Spain than in Portugal. But when we're talking about results in terms of media, we are talking about the difference, not 1 to 5, but 1 to 3. It's the
Exactly.
triple easily. So it's easy for us and to bring this information to a client, being a Portuguese, being a Spanish, or being an international client.
Especially now because we also have more tools, I feel,
Yeah,
to not only measure the exposure or the impacts, but also
Yeah,
to see how much we're giving back to the client when it comes to the ROI, you know?
yeah, yeah. The ROI, it's completely, it's impossible to not to measure, to not to create an ROI to bring to anyone that wants to be in a global, international, or even in a local campaign of PR or communication in a large in the large sense of the area of communication. And it's important to us to see
Yeah,
how
I
this
think
is being done.
Yeah, I think like back in the day, a lot of people used to think like PR, what am I getting from that?
Yeah.
Like because they can't see it like materialize and be like, yeah, this is what I'm getting from, or this is my ROI from this. But nowadays, I feel like brands understand then it's just not about something you can measure. It's also the exposure, it's the engagement, it's the relevance. There are things that maybe you can definitely measure, but you know that they're coming from there. It's a bit tricky
Mhm.
to explain, but it's true. And we see it here, we see it in Portugal, we see it everywhere.
Yeah, that's always the issue. It's difficult to explain some of the times. But you brought two words that are really important. One of them is exposure, and beside that is the relevance of that exposure. When you have the relevance and the exposure for a brand, and we can measure it, it will be easier to understand how the results will come, being them local or they being global. You have been involved in several campaigns, international campaigns, where this is something really important to the client. Not only have the local results and local achievements, but also international achievements and international results in the accumulated effort that is being done and has been worked on, and on the alignment of the messaging around the world for it. I'm thinking about a client that is a client from 3AW, like JD
Yeah,
Sports, that has this type of alignment. That is, we know the differences between the markets. We want to have good results. We know how the results are.
yeah,
We want to measure it. For us, the most important is the quality of the message. And
exactly.
how wrong is to ask for quantity instead of quality.
Yeah, because sometimes the client is like, how much can I get with this budget? And you're like, but it's not about the budget, it's about all the concept behind, about all the experience we're going to reach. Sometimes you don't even need to spend that much on a campaign, but if you have a good idea, like a good concept, or you're disruptive, you're going to be
Mhm.
even more massive than if you spend 1,000 euros, 1,000,000 euros. Like I think
Yeah.
it's sometimes it's more important about the quality of the content, like you mentioned JD, which is like a really good example of what happens there. It's maybe different than what happens here, like with the openings or the influencers or the street style message we send. But in the end, we don't lose the essence of the brand, and we are getting to the point of reaching important stuff, like always highlighting and showing the brand in exposure and their target media, but also getting attention from other sides that might not be the main target of the client, even though we didn't have it on the plan.
Yeah. And that is really important to this client. But we know that sometimes it's not enough.
That's true as well.
And what is not being enough? What is above the enough that is being asked?
I think sometimes, for example, when we speak globally, when you have a campaign in more than one country, sometimes the client expects it to push everywhere. And maybe we have an idea that works great, I don't know, in Switzerland, but then we go to the UK and it doesn't work. And they're like,
Yeah.
how is it possible that I'm spending the same amount of money and I'm getting 100 here and zero here? And that's when you need to reformulate and think about, okay, what's working here, how I adapt my strategy, how can I retarget. And it's hard, we're not gonna lie, but I feel like it also shows the proactivity. I think that's key when you have this type of situations. So instead of seeing it as a crisis, you see it as an opportunity. You always have to
Yep.
find the opportunity on the crisis.
That is very Japanese culture insight. There's
Yeah,
no crisis. There's an opportunity to
exactly.
to evolve, and it's interesting because you brought in your example two different countries, two different markets from the Portuguese or the Spanish. That is good, that because we're not just based or not focused on Iberia, but it's interesting to bring to clients this vision of, hey, what is happening here doesn't mean that will work correctly in the next market, but because they are completely different. If we go to the Netherlands, we know that the way a campaign goes, it's completely different from what it is in France or in Germany, and they are neighbors, or
Yeah, I
even
feel
in
like
yeah,
nowadays personalization is the new norm, like
yeah.
for everyone. Tailor your strategy to the individual preferences. Even though you are going to deliver the same message, you need to go through your data, your analytics, like create the most personalized and meaningful connection with your target. Because besides the personalization, you also feel like now you need to be meaningful. You need to
Yeah.
send these human sensations and emotions that can move people to actually be believe in what you're saying and not just feel like, oh, another one.
That is true. And it's interesting when you say that because for a long time, PR, and let's see it this way, PR was, we were seen as spin doctors and storytellers.
Yeah,
We were the ones to bring the fairy tale of the brand fairy tale to the market. And it was easy, people would say, because you don't have to worry about too many things. Your buyer persona, it's easy. It's the journalist. Even if the journalist has their different types and they have different ideas or interests, but it was the journalist. It
yeah,
was easy to segmentate and to define the persona. But now PR is it isn't talk
no,
only with the persona journalist. We are talking about being very behind of it or beyond it. That is
yeah,
going to the general public, going to the real personas, real brand personas, and talking to each one of them, as you said, in terms of personalization. How
exactly.
does this affect the campaigns?
I feel like that's why nowadays we need to do a bit more of like back office, for example, because if you don't know your audience, like even though back in the day you were going to journalists, now depending on the type of media, depending on the type of product, you want to reach them with a different experience. That's why we have now press strips. We send deliveries like JD. You can send a pair of sneakers so they can see what we can do. So I feel like it's really different now and creates a bit more of information part. Like we need to do a bit of more of research because we don't want to target in our own way our audience. Now the journalists are our audience as well. A good comment, a good press release, a good angle can major your brand. But if they don't get it the same way as you are selling it, then you might not get it the right way, or your story may never come out, especially when you're talking about organic
Yeah.
advertisement or yeah, press releases.
And when you're talking about advertising, organic, and releases, you're bringing us to the peso model and all the Gini Dietrich vision of what is integrated communications and how this is a larger environment that is surrounding public relations. And we are starting to talk about something that is completely different from what was in the books of public relations, where the definition of public relations was to create a goodwill and a respectful sense of a brand. And now we are talking about the creation and the development of a goodwill with the brand and
Yeah,
strengthen their relationships among the different stakeholders with all the channels available to the brand, including paid media channels.
that's
This is a
true.
huge this is a huge challenge and a huge change in terms of PR, because for a long time PR didn't touch the money, and now
Yeah,
we need to
just wanted
start.
to grow organic, to
Yeah.
share your stories and the people believe in them and sell it that way to the public. But nowadays, I feel like with all these people craving for authenticity, new interactive content, videos, and things like that, I feel like nowadays we need to apply for branded content. But now, branded content, for example, is not just a picture or an advertorial. It can also be, if you want a TikTok, that you can have it here, or you can have a video, because people, it's craving for
Mhm.
authenticity in the content. So each time we need to be more creative and not just tell stories, but making people believe that it's not just a story, it's the real thing.
Mhm. And the best part of the brand, when you're talking about brand content, is even being branded, it's not being seen as advertising.
Yeah,
And this brings us the authenticity that you were talking about, right? And there's always the temptation of bringing the theme and using the brand content to still sharing commercial
content. Yeah,
highlights and commercial content as it was 10 years ago or 20 years ago. And that is a huge mistake that is being done not only locally but globally, right?
yeah, yeah, that's true. I feel like at certain point we've abused of
Hmm.
branded content, and people was like rejecting it because they're like, I don't want to believe in something that is being paid. If it's being paid, it's because it's not good, or it's because they're just selling it. But nowadays I feel like the way you show the content, like the story or even just the picture of the brand, then can make
Hmm.
you turn the story upside down
Yep.
completely, and making the consumer believe in it. Because I feel like that's the main key, like to get this bonded, this optimize your touch points, so you can give
Hmm.
the customer like a better experience, even if they haven't bought the brand or they haven't interact with it. But the fact of giving the experience, it's already like making a huge difference.
Hmm. And it's something that we can use it not only on the top of the funnel, but in the middle of the funnel also when we're attracting new clients to a brand, right?
Yeah, I feel like that's key.
Okay. So let's do a little thing that is fun. Let's go to the beginning of our conversation. So, and let's go back to what is think and act local. And from what we spoke in the last 20 to 25 minutes, uh, one of the things that we can see is think and act local. It's not using the channels to be global.
Exactly.
It's not using the channels to be local. It's to think, develop, and strategize globally, thinking on the long term to create strategic activities for the medium and the short term in terms of presentation and to spread the word about the brand uh, on a local vision, on a local approach, where we are closer to the final consumer,
I
isn't
think,
it?
yeah, of course. Also, because I think back in the day, the brands will do a copy paste everywhere, just
Mhm.
sending their thing. But now it's more about a clear purpose, like getting a positive impact locally means adapting your brand without losing anything behind. Like, okay, I'm gonna bring this campaign, I'm gonna bring this message, but I wanted to really engage with this area. So I'm gonna bring this different like retro perspective, insights, and things like that. And I think it's really interesting because brands get a better push
Mhm.
without losing visibility.
It's easier than ever. It's easier to a small brand, a very small shop in a small village in the middle of nowhere in Portugal or Spain to escalate its communication and become global immediately
Yeah,
or in a very short period of time. We have some Iberian cases that and good practices that have been done that, and with it they got the funding to keep going. One of those was Walkers that they made it, and for those ones who don't know the story of Walkers, please try to find out because it's really fun. Because these guys, they are in the middle of Andalusia. No one knows where they are really, but every week they have cool parties on their office, and sometimes they have the best DJs in the world there just playing for the
for
employees.
the team.
And
Yeah,
why? Yeah, but how they did it? They created a very simple strategy of communication, very focused on local. They started to look for those ones who could present the product and show it in a very active way. So they created digitally an academy, influencer academy for people that were at the universities and showing their glasses. And what happened? It boomed. And everyone was showing, and everyone was trying to buy the Walker's glasses because they were cool and they were very look-alike the big and the high-priced glasses. And in no time, they were in Los Angeles for a trip, and they went to a Lakers game, and they said, "Why not trying to sponsorship Lakers, the basketball team?" And no one knows how they got in touch with the right
I'm
person
sure
and they
not
got the
even they
sponsorship.
know how
Yeah,
that happened.
and they become global. Period.
But
And they
it's what we
got the
were talking
funding.
before. Like sometimes it's not about like the money or this. It's
No.
about the concept. It's about being out of the box and just jump into your opportunity and go
Mhm.
for it.
But to do that out of the box, what you need, there's a key for doing the good out of the box things, right? That is knowing well your métier, knowing well your activity, your segment, your market, and knowing it not only well but better than the rest.
Anyone, exactly. If you don't know it, no one's gonna know it better than you.
Yeah. So you're not going to expect that someone from outside will going to come and say you're good in this. You need to know it. You need to
Yeah,
show it. You need to present it, right?
exactly. Because you don't want to be just another one in the market. You want to be the one for it.
And if we have this, knowing the brand as no one, knowing the market as no one else, what else that we need to know to act global and local?
I think it's
Knowing our personas, right?
yeah. I think cultural speaking,
Yeah.
culture, it's something really important,
Yeah.
because especially when we're talking about humor or things like that, what can work with a humoristic tone in one country might not be
That,
taken the same way on the other one. So when we're talking about, I don't know, sensitive brands, sensitive content, especially now with viralization, I think it's really important to take that into consideration.
yeah. You need to know how to use the nonsense to the spiritualized humor in these cases. We have it that in Portuguese. Let's bring a simple example. Even if Portugal and Brazil speak Portuguese, the Portuguese is different. And
Yeah,
being different, there are things that we cannot and we should not say it to a Brazilian market or to a Brazilian consumer, as well as a Brazilian brand shouldn't say some things to a Portuguese consumer.
one word
And
makes a difference.
a simple word, a simple
Yeah,
gesture, there are
exactly.
simple gestures that we do it in Portugal that we should not do it in Brazil or on the other side. The same happens in between Portugal and Spain because we know that when we go to Madrid, there are things that doesn't work the same way. Sometimes
Exactly.
we can talk for example, for simple things such as coffee. You don't drink coffee the same way as we do. The coffee that we drink it in Portugal, it's different from the coffee that you drink in Madrid.
Yeah.
And just a fait divers, 80% of the coffee that is being drunk between the frontier until Madrid is from a Portuguese brand. And even though the coffee it's different from the one that is sold in Portugal, they sold a completely different coffee, and the coffee is different. And if this happens with something so simple, why should we try to sell the communication of our brands the same way in both countries or in different markets?
Yeah.
We need always to think, adapt, and localize to each market the same way as we do it to other products, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like we say at 3W, we adopt, but then we adapt. And I
Yeah.
think that's the main key to actually succeed on every market. You need to grab your idea and adapt it to your target, to your objective, to your communication, or even just to the media. You need to be creative without disrupting it.
Desiree, and it was interesting. Now that you talked about we adopt and adapt, do you want to explain a little bit more or even better this idea and how the work is done in 3AW?
Yeah, sure. So a long time ago, our CEO had the brightest idea that it's great to have headquarters everywhere, but then it's impossible for some out from one outsider to think like everyone else in a different city.
Mhm.
So the idea came up of being, why don't we start growing, like having partners and give each of our clients the possibility to have a local agency that gives them our perspective or the campaign perspective, but from a local perspective. So that's where the we adopt, we adapt, and we apply methodology was born for the 3W network. We have over 25 partners, and it's great because even though we work here, we can work with different markets, like from here Spain to with Mexico and then US, and we also have an example, I don't know, with Colombia. But we grab the main idea, and then locally each agency gets the power to evaluate how they would focus their communication. Maybe here we use PR because it's more effective. But maybe if we go to the US, it's so big that it's not going to be meaningful enough to have a PR coverage unless you're in Forbes. So we apply social media or an ads campaign, and that's the richness of working internationally with different partners, with different agencies. That I come like, we have to do PR, and they come with, no, here we do it like this. And you start learning, and sometimes those perspectives, those angles also give you like a clear or a new perspective of things you can actually work, make them work here without going through the same strategies. And that's what we do. Like with you guys, that we work with JD, and we all do different things, but without losing the essence of the brand.
Yeah.
We work with influencers, or maybe we do a PR or an opening, and it's never going to be the same thing. But yet, if a client goes there and goes here, it's going to know it's JD. That's what we try to always maintain and sustain while working with different countries, that the brand feels like it's everywhere, but without being different, that the target, the customer, can understand that even here in China, they're going to get the essence of the brand, and they're going to live that personalized experience and authenticity without having to, I don't know, to be on the main place. Because that's something that back in the day was lost. Like if you don't go to the local country of the brand, the experience doesn't get the same feeling. But now I
Mhm.
feel like agencies work hard to be able to bring everything from each brand to each country, so everyone can have the same feeling, the same experience, and live the most personalized of it.
Yeah. And the personalization is the key word, right?
Yeah.
And personalizing this, now I'm going just to tease a little bit about it. We are getting in the end of this webinar and this live, and it was a pleasure to have you here talking about this, and the way you showed in such a simple way what is the essence of 3AW and how it is done and act in this local trend, and how we can see not only in this case in Duiton at Duiton offices, but worldwide through 3AW, the same vision, the same activities, the same way of thinking and doing
Yeah.
among brands, and pushing brands further and for the success of it. Desiree, it was a pleasure to have you here. Thank you for everything.
Thank you for
And
inviting me. The pleasure is mine.
now I'm going just to change it for a while to Portuguese, and then we'll keep. I'll give you the chance to say
Perfect.
goodbye again. Então, como nós vimos durante esta conversa que tivemos aqui com a Desiree, nós temos uma noção clara do que é agir e pensar globalmente e localmente. Como é que isto é feito? É algo que podem descobrir mais e melhor contactando-nos, quer seja através da 3AW, quer seja através da Do It On, bem como, se quiserem saber um pouco mais do que é que nós andamos aqui a falar das tendências, que hoje falamos muito levemente sobre elas, vão até o nosso site www.doiton.agency e façam o download, que está lá já à vossa espera. Próxima semana vamos falar sobre Marketing Automation. Vamos ter o CEO da Clausen, o Vítor Brandão, a falar connosco sobre este tema. E acreditem, vai ser valioso o conteúdo que ele vai nos trazer. Desiree, ahora voy a hablar en castellano, que vamos a cambiar para la lengua natural. Y muchas gracias por este tiempo que tuvimos aquí. Muchas gracias
Ha sido un
por tu
placer.
ayuda. Y como siempre, encantado de tener en una actividad como esta que estamos haciendo, y mucho suceso para A3W, y que nos vamos a ver dentro de un ratito, que creo que vamos a tener más actividades que vamos a hacer y con nuevos clientes que van a querer pensar
Claro.
global, pero agir y
ejecutar
hacer
local.
es ejecutarlo localmente, sí. Muchas gracias por todo.
A ti, Fernando, ha sido un placer, en verdad. Muchísimas gracias por la invitación. Encantada de hablar de todo lo que hacemos
Ujú.
siempre en la red. Trabajar contigo es un placer y los
Muchas
clientes
gracias.
encantadísimos.
Muchas gracias.